What's the state of accounting education? This is the Issues Watch podcast. Hi, I'm Don Meyer, Chief Marketing Officer at the New Jersey Society of CPAs, and welcome to the Issues Watch podcast. Disruption and transformation continue throughout the accounting profession. Such disruptions impact the entire accounting ecosystem in one way or another, but higher education has been one of the areas hardest hit. Declining enrollments and decreased numbers of CPA candidates have presented formidable challenges for institutions of higher learning, but accounting educators are adapting. Here with me to discuss how colleges and universities are transforming and thriving are three accounting educators who also happen to be CPAs and members of the NJCPA. On my right, we have Stephen Budrick, a manager at Trapp Aiken CPAs and Wealth Advisors and an adjunct professor at Ramapo College. Welcome,
Thanks,
Stephen.
Tom. Pleasure to be here.
To my left, we have Sarah O'Rourke, an assistant professor of professional practice at Rutgers Business School. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you very much.
And lastly, we have Barry Platnick, associate professor and accounting program chair at Stockton University. Welcome, Barry.
Thank you, Don.
All right. So, Barry, we're going to start with you. It's always dangerous to infer tone in an email, but I got an email from you back in August, and it said, "Good news, our accounting enrollment increased significantly." Now, I read it with some level of enthusiasm. Is that the way you meant to send it?
I did.
Okay, all right. So, what have you been doing to get students excited about accounting?
Well, last summer, we had a lot of open houses and instant decision days at Stockton. And I made it my purpose to go to pretty much every single one of them. And I told a story. And I focused on the accounting students that were there, but I also looked at the undecided majors. And I sat at those tables and I told them what accounting can do for you. And by looking at these students and then taking a look at in the fall, I saw some of these students at Stockton. And so I think just getting the word out to these students and going to these events during the summer pumped up our enrollments in accounting. And we went up pretty significantly from the other programs.
Okay, that's terrific. So, Stephen, Sarah, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, what are you seeing at your schools in terms of accounting enrollment?
Yeah, so with the enrollment, it is increasing. I mean, at least at Ramapo College, they just brought on the largest freshman class, also in history, 50 plus years at Ramapo too, and the accounting profession, as long with the class, is increasing as well. So the enrollment actually is going up. And we saw a slight decline over the past couple of years, but it has started to rebound a little bit more. And I see that in the classroom too, with the full classes size being picked up. The max we have is 30. Once in a while, we have to override some students in just so they can graduate on time too. But no, it's super exciting just to see that starting to trend back upwards.
All right. Sarah?
And same thing, we saw a bit of a dip in recent years, but I do, I think we've dipped, but in recent, especially this semester, we've seen a lot of increased interest in the accounting major. So I do think it's coming back slowly but surely.
Yeah. All right, so accounting enrollments are up. Our work is done here.
I don't know if it's that simple. But
Good job. Well, I mean, my question for you actually is the accounting enrollments is only half of the equation. The other half would be people sitting for the CPA exam, graduates sitting for the CPA exam. So you run a program at Rutgers, New Brunswick called Road to CPA. You've done that for how many years?
I think we started during COVID, so it was 2020-21. We started in kind of a weird time where everything was still online.
Okay, so going on 5 years.
Yeah.
Okay. So describe the program and describe how it supports students on their path to becoming a CPA.
Sure. So Road to CPA is really designed to be very inclusive. It's open to all accounting majors, and the idea is really that students are in different places. Some students really know exactly what they want to do. They understand the CPA path. They're clear on the requirements. And then other students are kind of lost and they need a lot more guidance. So the idea is really to meet students where they are, where they're at. So we offer everything from individualized career, academics, CPA guidance. For example, New York and New Jersey don't have the same CPA requirements. That's confusing for a lot of students, helping them figure out all of those requirements. We offer a lot of different career sessions, career information, because there are so many different great pathways in accounting. So helping students figure out what they are and what might be the best pathway for them, because it's not just audit tax. There's so many different things that they can do with it. We have a mentoring program where students can be paired with someone in the industry, and that's everyone from freshmen who may just be considering the major to seniors who are honed in on that CPA exam and they want specific guidance there. And then we offer actually a semester-long review course for the FAR section of the exam, because that's where a lot of candidates will start. And that's for students who want more than the traditional self-study review course, so they want that kind of structured guidance. So, and I'm always trying to think of new things. So for example, this semester we have an AI and accounting speaker series where students can learn about that topic. But the idea is really just to provide that support so that on that whole CPA path, which can be very intimidating, students don't feel lost, that they always feel like there's someone who can point them to that next step.
Right. Do you feel like all three, this question is for all three, do you feel like students, or I should start saying graduates need as much, let's call it hand-holding in terms of applying for the exam and just getting through that process? Because it's not an easy process, let's be honest about that. Yeah. Do you think they still need as much hand-holding as they did 20 years ago? Because we as an organization, we used to do a lot of programs with students. We would do webinars or in-person sessions where we would walk them through the online application just to make sure they didn't get tripped up. Do you think grads need as much attention for the process as they did 20 years ago?
I would say they definitely need some sort of, I wouldn't call it hand-holding, but at least assistance on it. I mean, at least when I ran through the process, I didn't really know what was going on at that point. Really, I mean, at least in class, I talk about it once in a while, about the exam, and then specifically on the application process too, to say, all right, you need the transcript, you need this, that, and the other, just so they have an idea, just so they're not going on to NASBA and trying to figure all this stuff out and looking at it for the first time,
right,
getting a little taken back by it too. So some sort of assistance definitely helps them.
And I would imagine it's got to be so discouraging when you fill out the application. If you make a mistake, an innocent mistake, your application gets rejected. I mean, the temptation is going to be like, oh, yeah. You know, why would I even bother with that? I haven't even gotten to the hard part yet, which is the exam, and already I'm struggling. Barry, what about you?
Well, I think if we just take a look what's in the classroom, the students do need a lot more support, and I noticed this after the COVID era. And so in our classes, especially the upper level classes, we bring the students to websites like This Way to CPA. We make sure the students have the resources for that. We do reach out to students and we do help students through the process. If when you get towards the senior year, especially in the area of the 150, they sometimes get a little confused, and especially when you mentioned about New York and New Jersey, when you could sit for the exam. So we do try to support them, and at our university we do have we do put a lot of emphasis on precepting. So all classes shut down one day in the spring and one day in the fall, and this way we could talk to the students, and at that time we can provide more guidance and with the accounting students. So all my students are accounting students, and all the other accounting faculty have accounting students, and so this way we can really 15-20 minutes we could talk about their classes, but we could also talk about the future, which we're trying to push the CPA exam if that's their vision.
Okay. And I think that's something that firms and other employers can get more involved in. That's one of the things when graduates are asked, what do you need in order to move towards applying for and sitting for the exam, they count on support, whether it's support from family, friends, maybe it's a professor, but also their employer. And perhaps an employer can provide not just verbal support and maybe time, and of course encouragement, maybe some financial incentive on the back end, but even working with them, having their firm admins or HR staff work with them to help them through the process, because as we said a few minutes ago, it is a complicated process. It's not that easy. So Stephen, you wrote an article for the fall issue of New Jersey CPA Magazine. It was titled "The State of Accounting Education: How to Appeal to the Next Generation." So share with us some of the new learning options for the next generation.
Yeah, so the new learning options, I would break them down into outside the classroom and then also inside the classroom at the same token. So outside, it's never going to change with that coveted internship, right? Every single accounting student needs some sort of internship before they graduate, in my opinion, just so they have some sort of experience. Any experience is great experience for them, especially if they're thinking about tax, maybe audit, and then they go into one internship and then they say, I don't want to do it, I'm going to move into something else. Better than if they graduate and then they don't have any experience, it's going to be tough. It's going to be on the time aspect, you're going to lose some time trying to gain an edge, frankly, into the career. Inside the classroom, I would say, on top of, at least with Ramapo, we have co-op programs. So you can go in, join a co-op program that you work with one-on-one with the professor, whether accounting or another business acumen, and you're working in the profession for credit at school. So typically when I did it back then, it was I wrote weekly journals on what I did during the week at work. And then that translated to a grade, but at least I saw the experience level with academia too. Because coupling academia and the industry is the great balance that at least I see and that I portray onto the students, just so they can have that sort of back and forth like that too. Inside the classroom too is a lot of the times they need to see how it's relevant to them also, so by putting a personal touch on there. So we work on payroll projections, income tax return preparation, just so they can see, all right, I can see it for the first time, make some mistakes, learn from it, maybe I can prepare my tax return come April. And that's the biggest sticking point for me, is trying to portray that on, because they just need to see that relevance so they can say, all right, I have some sort of experience, I need some more, but then at least I could take it to the next step with that internship, with a co-op program, or even a work for credit program too, with some schools and firms are joining them on together. Any experience that they can get in their limited time, because you can't teach everything in a 13, 15-week semester. They just need some sort of guidance in that regard.
Right. Do you think internships need to be like meatier? I mean, do they need to, because we all, there's the cliche about internships, about like you're just making copies or you're sitting around waiting to be told what to do. We're going to talk about alternative pathways to the 150 in a little bit, but if there's going to be less emphasis on classroom work going forward and more emphasis on experience, does that mean the experience should start even before you graduate with that internship? Should they be meatier and maybe a little bit more worthwhile for the student?
I would agree. Yeah, I mean, again, any experience that you can get. I mean, I started in more so an administrative role, but understanding the background and the foundation of a firm, and that helped out a lot with going into the position where I am now. But any experience that they get, so if it is just tax return preparation, accounting preparation, anything that they can take from the internship and review it back in academia so they could see the differences, the similarities, anything like that works. And to me, it's the best of both worlds in that regard.
Okay. So, Barry and Sarah, how have you changed what you teach or how you teach to accommodate new learning styles? Sarah, let's start with you.
So I totally agree with what you said outside the classroom. As far as inside the classroom, I do think it's important to be cognizant of generational differences. So the learning methods that maybe worked for my generation or the one before me is not necessarily what's going to work for this generation. I can even see it. I have boys who are 8, 11, and 13, and I mean, you do see there's differences. And it's not saying that you have to cater to everything, because I have some students come in and I don't think they know how to use a textbook. They don't want to read it. They don't want to do practice problems. They want it all nicely summarized in a YouTube video. And so sometimes you push back and you say, well, no, let's learn how to use a textbook, right? It's an important resource. But I think you always have to be willing to adapt and look for new and interesting things to do in the classroom. So doing things like incorporating polling software because it's fun, or incorporating review course material because it's great for students to get exposure to that. Or one thing we've really tried to do in our intro to financial accounting classes is to bring in guest speakers. So it's not just, hey, let's learn the fundamentals of accounting, but let's hear from a real professional about what you're learning and how that translates directly into a job and a workplace, because I think for those students who are still deciding on a major, that really resonates with them, is making that connection that, yes, we're learning debits and credits, but hey, it can translate into these 10 different career paths. So just really show students that connection, I think, is important.
Barry, how about you?
I agree with everything that Sarah said. What I'll add is that in the past, classes like managerial and intermediate, they were like called the weeding out classes. And I don't like to say that, all right?
Yeah, we should probably avoid language like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think with teaching accounting, this is my philosophy. I teach with care and compassion, okay? I want to make sure the students are successful. Now, there is a little thing that you have to balance it with, is rigor. All right, you don't want to go too soft, but you want to make sure that you consider the students' learning, and the content is the same, but it's the way you deliver the material, and which is critical. And what I'm trying to do with all the faculty at Stockton is to make sure that we always consider the care, and we try to make sure that if a delivery didn't work correctly, we alter that delivery. And I'm glad, because this year we have a president of the university that's his second year, and his opening remarks was exactly the way that I teach. He indicated that we should have care and compassion and balance it with rigor. So in the class is not one style fits all. And we can have 4 or 5 sections of managerial and the same thing with financial. One class could be in the evening, one class could be at 8 o'clock. And we try to do it standardized, but sometimes just the way you deliver. And if you have a test, say, on Wednesday, and the teacher doesn't feel the students are ready, then the class should not get the test. You should spend a little extra time giving the students an extra day, going over the material again. This is what we're trying to implement and doing it at Stockton, so that this way, we consider the students and make sure that the learning. The other issue is that sometimes we get focused too much on preventing cheating during classes, and we lose the fact that it's the learning outcomes, and we should be more focused on the learning outcomes rather than preventing cheating. Yes, I don't think you can ever prevent students from not cheating, but we should never move away from our main focus is on the learning outcomes, not figuring out how we can prevent them from cheating.
Right. So care and compassion as opposed to weeding out.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and that's interesting you mentioned that, because there's been a lot of research out there about why students or graduates don't pursue a career in accounting, or why they drop out of accounting. And it's too hard, fear of failure. I mean, those are actually big issues. And it was interesting what you mentioned about students preferring a YouTube video or something like that. I read an article last week that said that even at elite colleges, there are students who get on campus and they complain to, say, an English teacher about all of the reading assignments because they weren't assigned books in high school and middle school. And so I think, this idea of care and compassion and making sure they're ready, this is something that teachers or professors, educators in general, probably didn't have to consider 10, 15 years ago, because there are these things that we take for granted. So the next question is for all three of you. The AICPA and NASBA recently released a proposal recommending an alternative pathway, as I mentioned earlier, pathway to licensure that might take some students out of the classroom and put a greater emphasis on real-world experience. So how can academia and the accounting profession work together to ensure that the skills that students learn in the classroom translate into successful careers? Because the whole point of introducing those extra 30 credits 20 plus years ago was they wanted grads to be more well-rounded. They wanted to have a different set of skills. And I know in my time here, when I've been asked by students, well, what should I take with those extra 30 credits? I always recommended, because in my background's in communications, I always said take things related to presentation skills and communications. Become a better writer, become a better communicator. We say all the time that accounting isn't just about numbers. You have to be able to communicate what you know to people who don't know as much as you. So get better at that. But sometimes people ended up taking like Alabama dinosaurs and basket weaving and things like that. So how can the three of you and other educators work with the accounting profession to make sure that they have the skills they need, or they get the skills they need in order to make that successful transition into the profession? So Steve, let's start with you.
Yeah. It's all a couple on what you said with the compassion, with the teaching too, is as CPAs, we're stakeholders for our clients, but as educators, we're stakeholders for the students too. So by looking at it in that perspective, with bridging the gap between academia and industry, it's bringing in professionals. So at least with, we do tax planning presentations towards the end of the semester, so that'll be roughly in December at this point. I bring in colleagues, and then they sit in, they watch the presentations from the students, and then they can have that feedback. So not only from me as a CPA, but also colleagues that are also CPAs and that have other experience levels that can then portray that and give them advice in that end. With looking at it in the sense of what else can academia do with the profession, it's just having that opportunity for students to go out into the profession. So if maybe it's not an internship, it could be a shadowing program. That they go to different firms, that they shadow for a day, a week, whatever it is, just so they can see the different aspects of different areas that they may not necessarily want to go full throttle into, but they have that chance to say, all right, I looked at a tax return today, maybe not, but let's go into auditing or go into forensic accounting, anything to that effect, just so I have a better grasp as a student what I want to focus on with the extra 30 credits potentially, or more so on that internship later on down the road.
Barry?
Well, I agree with everything that you said. With the students, we had one of the top 10 CPA firms in the country. And one of the things that they said is that this person is about in the 60s and everyone is in their 40s. No one has the skill set to go out and get clients. And so we're very focused on the accounting part of it. But when you mentioned, Don, about the communication skills, that's critical, because in these new students that are coming into these accounting firms, they don't know how to go out to get clients. And if they're going to move up in the public accounting firms to partner position, that's one of the requirements, is to be able to communicate what you could offer to your stakeholders, those clients. And so I think we really do need to do a better job working with the accounting firms and corporations to see what skills they need before we send students in there, to make sure that those students are getting those soft skills and plus also the accounting skills. In an auditing class, we can't teach them an actual audit, but when they get into practice, they should have the theory, all right, understanding it, and they should be able to move in that auditing process a little bit better. So I definitely agree that we should have more connection with with public accounting firms and with corporations to find out more with skills. When they do come in for guest speaking, they tell us everything that they need, but sometimes in higher education we do move a little bit slow, but a little bit more formalized process on what they need.
Okay. Sarah?
So, as I said before, I think it's just really important to be open to evolving and change, and I don't think any one institution will solve this problem of the accounting shortage. So it's really schools, firms, and state societies all need to work together. So if we can keep that conversation going. And it's really true what you said. It's not just basic. I mean, they need the fundamental accounting stuff, but I know one thing we really push with students is the people skills. And so it's not just enough to get good grades in your accounting classes. I mean, that's important, but I know that's a mistake I made when I was a student. I was so focused on my GPA.
Right.
But you need to get involved in clubs. There are so many different clubs. Find yourself a leadership position. Get out there to networking events. Learn how to talk to people. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, but it's such a necessary skill. And incorporating things in the classroom, so it's not just accounting, but try to work in a little bit of technology or analytical skills into every class, or maybe it's a separate class. But we really do try to promote with students that, yes, you need the accounting knowledge, but the people skills is such a big part of being successful. And again, just always being open to new ideas, trying new things, being willing to kind of adapt. Nobody likes change from the traditional format, but if we're looking at these programs where maybe it is a little bit more out of the classroom and more work experience, but I think we have to be willing to kind of entertain those ideas and see what might work.
All right. So you mentioned, there's a lot of different players, a lot of different actors in trying to help out with these pipeline challenges. You mentioned firms, state societies, colleges and universities, certainly individual CPAs. I wonder if the students and the graduates should be also encouraged perhaps to know what is going to be in their best interest. So when they graduate, I think firms and companies are so busy these days, and they want the students and the graduates to be able to hit the ground running. And a lot of times they might be kind of pigeonholed into one particular area. In fact, maybe with one particular client, and they don't get as well-rounded an experience as perhaps they should. And I'm wondering if students and grads should be encouraged to, in a professional way, say to their employer, hey, listen, I'd like to learn more about the entire firm. I'd like to learn more about everything that the firm is doing, as opposed to just kind of focusing on that one particular aspect in the whole billable hours concept.
Absolutely. I always tell students, any experience is good experience. Try out different things, build your skill set. I mean, the more well-rounded, the better, right? You're just setting yourself up for success.
Right. What particular aspects of accounting are you seeing students interested in? I know when I started with the society a million years ago, forensic accounting was a big thing. Everyone was really interested in forensic accounting.
Yeah.
Is that still a hot topic?
Yes.
Okay.
I get so many questions on forensic accounting just because I think it sounds exciting and different. And that's why I think it is important to kind of give students an idea of all the different pathways, because, for example, they hear about tax and they think it's just preparing tax returns, but it's not. It's tax planning. There's lots of exciting stuff that's part of tax, but forensic accounting is definitely one I get questions on all the time.
Okay. Barry?
I would say the data analytics. One of the things that a lot of students are interested in is that consulting, that advisory services. And I've given the students some experiences. For example, my wife works for a health education institution, and they hired one of the big 4 accounting firms to do something there. It wasn't accounting related. And the students are very, very interested in that. And so I think that the data analytics gives the students that insight, and a lot of them do take some extra courses in that area. So I think the students, for the ones that I have, they're more focused on being able to help clients through that advisory services.
Yeah, a lot of interest in that. I think because it touches on so many different areas, and you can work in hospitality and gaming, and I think I've seen a lot of interest in that as well. Stephen, how about the students around?
I would agree with Barry too, with the IT, the data analytics area too, because at least in that regard, you can build the accounting software that helps out everybody else, right? So by having that background of not only knowing the debits, credits, and tax returns, audits, everything there, it's that infrastructure of helping out the profession 10, 15 years down the line too, with that infrastructure on the IT system. And a lot of the students, they're still interested in, I wouldn't call it bare bones, but the regular audit tax aspect. But then I asked them, I said, what do you think accountants do on a daily basis? They're still more so geared towards maybe a stereotype of just at the desk all day. So by breaking it out with the communication aspect, taking a public speaking course, whatever it may be, but then by advising them that, no, I may not even be in the office the entire week because I'm out of clients. I'm speaking with clients, looking at new business opportunities too. And so having that chance to at least reflect on my experience with them, they can see that, all right, maybe I want to do consulting. Maybe I want to go down that road and have a little aspect of a little bit of everything that I can, that's like a jack of all trades toolbox that I could portray out to all our clients.
Okay. And there's a lot of talk, of course, about AI, and I think when ChatGPT came out, and then all these other tools, like usual, whenever there's a new technology, the immediate fear is that it's going to replace accountants. Yeah. But I think there's a lot of opportunity there for, well, if you don't want to be replaced by AI, become an AI expert yourself, and then, to your point about advisory, then you could be advising your clients and customers about how to be more effective and be more efficient using AI. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be you get replaced by, it could be, well, you use that tool to make more money for your firm or for your company and so forth. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there as well. One last question, surprise question. So hypothetically, you are CPA czar for the day. How would you fix, or how would you address the accounting pipeline challenges in 30 seconds or less?
Okay, what I would like to see happen is the students are taking the CPA exam. I would like to see more data analytics on their results, so that we could fix things in the classroom. In the past, we were just getting actual scores, but I would like to be able to dig deep, so if we're not teaching them something in auditing or in IT, this way we could focus on it. And that would be on my bucket list, to get that information.
Well, we'd love to see that too. That's a great point. So you would be a benevolent CPA czar. Sarah, how about you?
I feel like I might get in trouble for saying it.
Well, we won't use this part.
We can edit it. I feel like maybe the 150 is potentially serving as a roadblock, that requirement.
Okay. Yeah, don't worry about that one.
Okay.
Everybody's saying that.
I feel like for a while that was a really controversial statement to make, but sometimes I just feel like we're looking at all these different ways to kind of circumvent or make it easier. And then I see a lot of students just taking not useful credits, but random credits to get it. And so sometimes I don't know how much value it's adding, and I feel like maybe when you're comparing accounting against finance, and accounting has 150 and finance doesn't, I just feel like maybe we should look at ways to, maybe we don't need that requirement.
Right. Yeah, your comments are definitely, they would have been controversial probably 2 years ago.
Okay.
But I think now they're very current, very timely.
Okay.
And we'll actually, the NJCPA will be sharing more with members about our position on the AICPA and the NASBA proposals. And I think pretty much every state CPA society and the lion's share of CPAs are in lockstep with that. In fact, we've done surveys, and I think it was around 60% of our members said they see no difference between graduates with 120 and 150. Yeah. So you're safe. You're safe. We can keep it in. We don't need to edit that out. How about you?
Yeah, I would say more hands-on experience. So taking out classroom learning, the academia, as much as it's more geared towards that CPA exam, by having that chance really to go into firms, maybe it's 2 firms, 3 firms, whatever it is, during the semester over a year's time. They gain that experience with the people, the colleagues, the people skills, but also the infrastructure in the sense of, all right, here's the debits and credits that I looked at last week in the textbook. How does it apply here? Because accounting is so different from the textbook into practice that, again, like I said, you can't learn everything in a 13, 14-week semester. So by seeing it on the book, all right, that's great. Now here's the answer. It's more difficult to find the answer in industry sometimes. So by having that chance, more shadowing opportunities, so more of the professionals can work with maybe high school or even in college students in that regard, just so they can put a name to the face of, all right, I learned this from so-and-so at this firm. I learned this from so-and-so in that firm. Just so they can again, keep it relevant so that they can see a vision of their future ultimately.
All right. I think that's great advice. So data analytics, perfect. Give them an easier pathway, or maybe not easier, but a simpler, more efficient pathway, which I think most people would agree with
Fewer
you on.
roadblocks.
Fewer roadblocks, exactly. I think everyone would agree with that, and more hands-on experience. Match up what they learned with what they're going to need to know in their career. So I think great advice. So we will leave it at there. I will say no more. Thank you all for joining us today. For more information about the CPA pipeline, visit njcpa.org/pipeline. Thank you.